Go off, people. I was going to start singing.
It's because Martin's going to let them know that there's going to be might be some presentations to share.
Oh. No. So people walk off and hear there's a presentation, Philip. Okay. Are we all here? We're all here. Just check the broadcast has started. Got the big thumb, like that. Just wait for the chief executive. He's coming around. Here he is. Good morning, Adrian. So the broadcast started. Good morning. I'm Boyd Elliott, the chair of the committee, and I would like to welcome you all to this meeting of the Overview Committee that is being broadcast live and recorded for publication. And we go to agenda item 1 to ask the committee, those who are here, to approve the minutes of the last meeting. I'm going to take that as a vote. Thank you. Yeah.
Okay. Can I just raise a question, not about the accuracy of the 5. On page 3, the second bullet point up from the bottom. This is under paragraph 5. Yeah, okay. It says, in response to a question regarding net zero requirements being part of procurement and any data regarding this, it was agreed to take this away and look at any data gathering and evidence regarding impact. Where will that evidence come to? Because it says you're going to do that, but then what's going to happen?
We'll bring it back here.
Back here. Okay, thank you.
Okay. Happy with that? Any other matters? Okay. If we all agree, we'll vote with a show of hands. Thank you. Okay. Agenda item 2, which is apologies for absence.
Yeah, so we've had apologies from Councillor Ogle on other council business, and we've got Councillor Butler substituting. We've had apologies from Councillor Shaw for other reasons, and Councillor Wilmot is substituting. And we've had apologies from Councillor Carr for other reason, and there's no substitute.
Okay, thank you. With that, we'll go to agenda item 3, which is declarations of interest. If any councillor or officer has an interest in any matter on the agenda, you should declare it now. Please raise your hand now if you have an interest to declare. If you have an interest to declare, you should state what type of interest it is and give brief details. No one. Okay, that's fine. Okay, we go to agenda item 4, which is budget monitoring process and budget framework. And I'll ask Councillor Richard Jackson, the Cabinet Member for Finance and Resources, to introduce the report. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. It's an annual report that we bring to your committee. You can see the dates, which are set out in the table on the first page. Those are the dates when the monthly budget monitoring report is approved and published. Opposition groups are all given the opportunity to have a briefing on that with officers. It goes to Cabinet at the dates you can see in the end column there, and it comes to this committee as and when you want us to bring it to this committee. Quite happy to take any suggestions of any tweaks to the timetables or to the process that we use. I don't think there's a great deal more to add to what's in the report, which I'm sure members have all read. Whether Nigel has anything to add or not, but happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Richard. I'm going to bring Nigel in if there's anything further you would like to add.
Thank you, Chairman. Only to say that the appendix that sets out the provisional timetable is provisional. There are a lot of dates in there that yet to be set for all sorts of reasons. Thank you, Chairman.
Okay, before I open it to the floor, I'm going to move the recommendations as set out on page 11 and ask for a seconder. Second. Thank you. And now I'll open it up. Has anyone like to talk? Okay, Councillor Creamer.
It's been partially answered actually. That's the flexibility of the dates. because maybe a budget after an election, whoever wins, and I assume that's the reason for the flexibility. Yeah,
Absolutely, Councillor Creamer.
Okay. Any other speakers on this? Okay. With Councillor Purdue Haran.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Sorry, please.
thank you, Mr. Chairman. As I was sort of heavily involved in the process from the Independent Alliance perspective, I'd like to thank Nigel Stevenson and Glenn Bicknell for regularly meeting with the Independent Alliance group and talking to us about budgetary items that impact the council. My question is about the budgetary timetable. Earlier this year, the council published its full budget report on the 14th of February. Yet, our budget proposals or amendments had to be submitted and signed off as legal by the 8th of February, and that's not an ideal situation where we're sort of in the dark, as it were, until publication. Is that something that could be looked at for future budgets? I'm thinking of in terms of you could have a broad draft. I'm not, obviously the ruling group, the executive would not wish to share every detail, but a broad picture would be helpful for scrutiny and debate. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Francis. Nigel, do you want to pick that up? It's the question being that those budgets should come in at the same date, or is that what you're saying?
Yeah, well, first of all, may I thank Councillor Purdue Haran for his comments in terms of thanking the finance officers and our support to all groups, particularly from the Ashfield Independents. We moved in terms of the new framework to try and publish the amendments at the same time as the full budget to allow all members to understand both the budget and the amendments when it comes to the full debate. We try to be as flexible as we can, Martin, the monitoring officer and I, in terms of getting to see whether it's a legal amendment, so that takes a little time to go through that. We'll try and do our best to provide as much info, but I know in terms of the nature of the next year's budget setting process and how important that is in front of an election, to provide as much info as we can, and we'll continue to do that to help all groups in terms of formulate budgets and their amendments. But I prefer, if we can, to try and stick to the date as a publication. But maybe that's something for a further review after this budget cycle.
Councillor Wilmot.
Thank you very much, Chairman. I'd like to echo Councillor Purdue Haran's thanks to the Council's finance officers. They did a really excellent job. On the 31st of January, the Independent Alliance held a budget meeting with officers, which I was there. We discussed aspects of the budget. We couldn't talk about the specifics, including the amount that council tax was going to rise. Officers were sworn to secrecy, yet all we needed to do is to find out what was to go to the Nottingham Evening Post website. The journalists had all the details, I'm finding out, on the 30th of January. Don't you feel that this put officers in a difficult position? It was disrespectful to many councillors, and also on the impact of its decisions on residents. I just wondered what the officers thought about it.
Thank you, Councillor Wilmot, for your question.
I think it's really difficult for officers to comment on that question, to be honest.
I think the question is...
Yeah, no, look, I'm happy to answer that, Chairman. We published exactly in line with the dates that we previously indicated that we would publish these.
Thank you.
That we would publish all that information. I think there was a bit of a timing issue on that particular day, we'll stick to the dates that are in the report as near as we can this coming cycle.
Thank you, Councillor Jackson. Councillor Kerry.
Yes, thanks, Jim, for bringing me in. I just wonder what the rationale need is for different groups to understand what other groups are putting forward for their budget proposals and the level of council tax increase that they are proposing within their own budgets. Surely, if you understand what services you wish to deliver and understand to deliver that, you have to put an increase in, or whatever change in council tax is, you do that based on the delivery of services that you want to do, rather than somebody else's budget increase. So I'm not sure whether you actually need to know that as a different group at that time. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for having an understanding of the budget space.
It's a fair point. I mean, if I think back many years to when I first came here and Bruce was doing an alternative budget, and then I took on the role of doing it, it is a long time ago, but they were real alternative budgets. What we've had in recent years, probably the last decade or so, actually, has been budget amendments, and it's up to groups whether they want to take many months to put in a thorough alternative budget, or whether they want to see the administration's budget and put in what really are quite minor amendments to it, which take far less time.
Councillor Guilford.
Yeah, just for clarification, because I actually think you're right. The last couple of meetings, they've actually, in my opinion, they've been budget amendments, not a new budget. Because much of the budget is state there, and you've picked a specific item that you've wanted to alter. Do the dates then, and this would answer the question for you, do the dates then alter for when a budget amendment is submitted? So can a budget amendment be submitted after the date of your budget being made public, as opposed to a budget which is going to be done, which you're saying, well, it's all got to be done on the same day or 8 days prior? Because it's an amendment, surely you can only make an amendment to a budget once you've seen the budget. You can't. So therefore, I would argue constitutionally that what you do is you'll have to wait while the budget is produced, and if you want to make an amendment to it, you do it then. If you're actually going to review every item of the budget and cut every or alter in any way, shape or form every budget head, then that's an alternative budget. Which I would think you would have to prepare with officers sat round, whereas a mere amendment is an amendment too. That's as I would say constitutionally. So therefore, you can put that, if it allows you now in the new now you've twiddled about with the constitution, if that's allowed, and probably that's the advice we need to seek from people.
Take that away, can't we?
If I may, thank you, Chair. We do try and encourage opposition groups to start their process of looking at alternate budgets and changes and their thoughts well before the Christmas period. And as members have identified, finance officers do appear at group meetings on a regular basis to keep colleagues updated, but that does involve some work with probably corporate directors and other officers from the departments, not just a conversation with the finance officer. But I will go back to if it is just an amendment, that it's Cabinet that make the proposals for full council, and those papers are published at the end of January, which is plenty of time, I think, for thinking of an amendment before it has to be published for the 19th of February.
Yeah. And we learned that from a couple of years ago when it was rushed, wasn't it? And that was one of the first learning things from this overview committee, that we gave ourselves more time, and we brought the budget review to the cabinet meeting in January, so it gave all groups time for an amendment. Okay, I'll bring Councillor Foley last one signal to speak. So,
Thank you. Yeah, I think the point's been well made. Because particularly this year, this coming year, we're going to need doing about time, aren't we, to think very hard about the budget. I think one of the difficulties you have in opposition is actually in terms of kind of making really kind of radical change. It's very difficult when you haven't been in power for a while. And I think don't underestimate the fact that although we bring stuff to scrutiny, and the finance team have been brilliant. Thank you. You really do work with kind of very well. We don't get the kind of detail that you do. So, and you're talking about when you did alternative budgets, kind of Bruce. There's an awful lot more money around then, wasn't there? So I think it's a bit more transparent in terms of what is possible to do. And given the state of public council finances, it is actually very difficult sometimes to find other options. And I think that's very difficult for all of us, isn't it? Not just opposition parties. So just to say thank you, Nigel, for you and your team. You've done a brilliant job with us. And yeah, let's start good and early. And I think the longer we can all give to think through some more creative and innovative ideas to serve the people of this county, then I think the better. So thank you.
Thank you, Kate. I'd like to echo that as well and thank the finance department. I think over the last 2 years we've seen the most transparent budget process that this county council has seen in many years. So congratulations, thank you. Okay, no one else signalled to speak. There's no recommendations come from that debate. Lots of good remarks and questions. So we'll now move to the vote on the original recommendations. All in favour? Any against? Abstentions? Okay, that's carried. 1 abstention. Thank you. We'll now move to agenda item 5, the annual budget survey. And I'll ask Councillor Bruce Lawton, Elected Leader and Cabinet Member for Transformation, to introduce the report. Thank you, Bruce.
Yeah, thank you very much, Chairman. Yes, in those days, what did make it easy, Kate, was the fact that there were double-digit increases in council tax every year. I think it went up by nearly 100% in 6 years under the then administration. So that did give us a lot of leeway to play with, because we were trying to keep it down to a sensible level. Anyway, that's not what I'm talking about here. I'm talking about the annual budget survey. And actually, we started in October, believe it or not. That's when we started. When me and Peter Herford and Carl got going with the budget. So this is the annual budget survey and the lessons learned. Can I thank all those officers that have been involved? Obviously, in the last budget survey, we got it in well in time, and therefore it was able to come through. My portfolio, as opposed to languish in perhaps the wrong word, in Richard's domain. And it is an important mechanism, and it is a link between ourselves and the people of Nottinghamshire. It is always a difficult situation when you are trying to get individuals to fill out budget surveys, because unfortunately budgets, cash flows, impressed accounts, all these sort of things are a bit turgid, really, as far as members of the public are concerned, and in inverted commas making them sexy, to get them to respond to these surveys is a difficult task, and they have taken it. They've taken it on board. We've had 3,911 responses, which is about the best in the country. As far as county councils is concerned, as far as the county council network is concerned, we're up there at the top of the table, and that is down to the work that's been done by our officers. That's not to say we can't get better, and there is plenty of room to get better. When you're looking at the responses, we're talking about where are we? 1 in every 213 residents has actually responded to the budget survey, and we are having to take cognizance of it as part of our legal process. So we are going to look at other ways of trying to improve it, with the recommendations that have come through of the overview committee, which we're really pleased about, and we are going to try our best to be able to increase our coverage without increasing costs,
because that is obviously a paramount importance to us. So, and to the council as well, we'll look at things like even artificial intelligence and exploring what we can do with that. I can see you smiling, Councillor Owen. But we've got to look at innovative ways of trying to improve the way we reach out to the people that we represent, because now council tax is one of the biggest bills in people's households. You know, it is one of the biggest bills. It is has a significant impact on household budgets, and we need to make sure that we listen to what people have to say and how we spend that money. Unfortunately, and I will shut up in a minute, Mr. Chairman. Unfortunately, we are hamstrung with a lot of our statutory services, which we cannot get away from. You know, we have a statutory duty to be able to provide those services. It means that there is not great quantities of money slushing around as there was in 2005 and 2006, and that budgets are tight, and both in particularly in adults and young people's, they are constantly looking at trying to innovate, and that will come on to the next paper, which we're going to be talking about after this one. It is absolutely essential that though we keep a tight rein on that budget. The last thing we want to be doing, and this is not a political comment, because there are other authorities that have gone down that route. The last thing we want to be doing is leaving ourselves exposed to what is happening next door to us. They do not want commissioners. We do not want commissioners anywhere near what we do in Nottinghamshire, because we believe we are the rightful people to provide those services for the people of Nottingham, not people penny pinching as they are trying to save a few pounds and impacting on where we are and what we deliver. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I move the recommendation.
Thank you.
On the paper, and we'll answer any questions.
Thank you, Bruce. I'll ask Isabel now. Isabel Fleming, is there anything further that you would like to add? If Bruce has left you anything, that is.
Thank you very much, Chairman. Excuse me, I'm quite croaky today. As you'll see from the recommendations, that there are some efforts being made to refine the development of the process, and so as part of recommendation 2, it is asked that the committee consider the areas of further development referenced at paragraphs 18 and 19, and if there's any of those areas which may be deemed for appropriate for further investigation for the forthcoming annual survey.
Thank you, Dr. Isabel Fleming. Before I open the floor to the debate, I'm going to move the recommendations as detailed in the report.
Second.
Okay, thank you. Now, anyone like to speak? Councillor Creamer?
Yeah, it sort of links more into actually the second recommendation. Well done on the report anyway, I would say top of the league, but it's a very small league, unfortunately, and there is always room for improvement. And within that, do we have any demographics of where we're weak and where we're strong? On about area as well, is Gedley stronger than Ashfield, Webb Bassett or stronger than this elsewhere? So do we have any areas where we need to work on? And within age demographics, do we need to know there's areas we're keeping or losing as time goes by? Because it's important as we're working forward and trying to gain people that we keep people involved. So do we have to demograph? Do we know where we are actually weak in getting the data, and are we addressing it?
Thank you. Yes, we do collect demographic data. We keep it at a relatively high level, and obviously people may not choose to fill in all of the different categories. However, in the age demographics, if you've quite rightly noted, we have a much smaller take-up, particularly in the children and young people's completion of the survey, and therefore, as you'll note in the recommendations, that's particularly an area that we may wish to explore if we wish to increase the demographics in that area. Throughout the survey process, we are able to look and see if there are any particular areas that we may need to target in terms of demographics. But as you'll see from the way in which the survey is sent out, we ensure that we are trying to encourage as many different groups via different mailing lists and contacts to fill those in. So these could be different residents groups, these could be different business community, these may be different hard to reach groups where we're able to target mailings that the council has contacts for, which we're able to do for that purpose.
You happy?
Yes, thank you. It's just as long as it's being addressed, because we doesn't want to slip under the radar. You know, identifying it and that not using the data is a bit of a crime.
I think we've learned, however we engage with our residents, is there's always the hard to reach cohorts. There's always those that will interact at every opportunity. So, Councillor Introna.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just wondered, thank you for the report, and it's good to see that it's a developing score, if you like, in terms of improvement, and I'm pretty sure that that will continue. Statistically speaking, I mean, some people could argue that 0.5% of the population is statistically relevant and of use, but I just wondered, do we actually have an aspiration of where we'd like to get to, rather than just we want to improve? Do we want to get to double figures within 3 years or 2 years, or is that sort of aspiration built into what we're trying to do, even if it is an informal aspiration? Thank you.
Bruce, do you want to pick that up? Yeah. Okay.
I mean, no, we don't, Mike, is the answer to that. It's just trying to do better at every available opportunity, and so the officers are constantly striving to improve their ability to be able to touch those parts of the community that they haven't done previously. So is there a benchmark as far as this is concerned? No, not really. Is there a benchmark as far as the CCN is concerned and what other councils are doing? When you listen to what they've got to say and their leaders say, no is the answer to that. So I think we've just got to try and strive to be alluding to, then sometimes you just go backwards, don't you? You're far better off just keep encouraging and keep moving forward.
Okay, thank you. Okay, Councillor Perdue-Haran.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I just wish to also thank officers for the efforts that they put into increasing the reach through various platforms, and you know, and I think it is something to acknowledge that we seem to have done quite well against some peers. And I think if we can even get to the position of, you know, the turnout in local polls would be a real progress in terms of getting engagement from the public. The Independent Alliance wrote to the council with some concerns about the budget consultation. The senior scrutiny officer will have a copy of our email earlier in the year. In it, we raised the issue of highways, roads, and pavements that were not mentioned at all, and this is despite the fact that this seems to be the biggest thing that residents get in touch with us about. I know that I had my ear chewed off from various parish and town councillors who are complaining. And we specifically asked that this question be included. Nottinghamshire County Council are responsible for our highways, including road safety and the upkeep of our roads and pavements. Overall, how satisfied or dissatisfied are you with the way the Nottinghamshire County Council deals with our highways? And it seems our request was ignored. And I just wonder how confident we can be that the consultation is, you know, completely relevant to our residents. And would you agree we might need to consider including a section about highways next time, which may actually also help to increase the reach? Because if they're going to talk about highways, they might also give their opinion on other surveys. Thank you.
Yes, I am actually quite open to looking at the structure of the questionnaire. Whether we add highways or not, I don't know. But I think we constantly rationalise and look at the questions that we're asking the members of the public to find out to really see whether they are fit for purpose. I think is the thing. So we will look at that. But you know, Francis, I do take a bit of a political point of view on this particular issue. There is no doubt that, and here's a bullet for you. There's no doubt that Ashfield are very good at putting out surveys into their communities and getting a good response rate. And we have contacted Ashfield and asked them if we can dip into that database to be able to improve our response rate from our budget survey. And the response has been nil, as it has actually from another borough council. And so I take issue that your problem is you're trying to politicise my budget survey, yet you're not prepared at the other flip side of the coin to help the due process so that we can become more successful. So whilst I will listen to what you've got to say, I think support here is a two-way street, so to speak. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Bruce. Francis, when you obviously looked at the survey as well. On the survey, there is an area there for additional comments that the residents can make. So that would incorporate, if they did have comments to make about the highways, because that was all in the background of the survey, which the residents would have read as they were filling it out, outlining what the council's responsibilities are. And one of those responsibilities was highways. So, Councillor Wilmot, bring you in there. Thank you.
Yes, thank you very much, Chairman. First of all, I'd like to thank Councillor Lawton for his report and also the work that's been done by the officers to get as far as we have done and in listening to the community. But what I'm interested in as a member of this organisation is the facts. And firstly, it's got to be congratulations on getting the views of 0.3% of the Nottinghamshire population. That's facts. That's fact. Can you give us a few examples of where the policies of this council and the outcomes have changed as a result of listening to the voice of residents through the consultation? That's my first question. And my final question is, further to this, can you tell us the total cost of this exercise, or is this part of the council's 1.1 million communications budget? Thank you.
Yeah, we'll look at the cost and we'll forward that information on to the community. It is an expensive process. So we've got the figures, £922. So when I say it's an expensive process, it's not that expensive. But what I'm saying is you could run away with money as far as putting out these surveys are concerned. So what we try and do is get the best possible pound for our buck, if you see where I'm coming from. We get the best possible outcome as far as it is while spending the least amount we can get away with. And that's why we're looking at all different avenues to be able to try and access information.
Isabel, yeah, you can add.
Thank you very much, Councillor Wilmot, for your questions. Just in terms of the cost, you will see that in the published reports when we took the survey for publication. And as part of the costings, the work that the Overview Task and Finish group did in contributing to the design of the last survey actually looked at how we could still keep a paper copy presence but not distribute as many. So actually some of that work enabled us to reduce the costs, which, as you'll see, the last survey was more effective, more cost efficient. as Councillor Lawton says, we always look at a range of different avenues, and we also included the opportunities for advertising in the libraries and for people to fill those in by calling the customer service centre. So by reducing the number of paper copies did not impact on the numbers that we'd received back as well, and we can evidence that in the number of paper copies received on each year basis. So just to provide assurance on that base.
Thank you. Councillor Wilmot.
Question to you, Chairman, is £992,000. Oh, right. Is and it's getting the views of 0.3% of the Nottinghamshire population. Is that value for money?
The answer is it's a statutory process. Okay, we have to consult with the members of the public. So the answer is yes. Is to your question, is £922 too much? Well, I do not think so. But it doesn't take into account the amount of officer time, obviously, we've been putting into this. But we have got to, as part of the statutory process, to make Richard's budget official, we have to go through this process and feed that information into the budgetary monitoring.
Is it a statute? We consult with businesses, don't we?
It's a statutory to consult with businesses. It's not statutory to consult with the public, as I understand it.
Well,
Okay.
It's statutory only
apologise.
for the business community.
Yeah, but there are statutory
It's a
elements.
choice. If I may, it would still be considered as best practice
Best practice, yeah.
to actually consult with businesses, particularly because it's around council tax.
See, I just want
You ought to have known that, Bruce.
So again,
You ought to have known that.
I think it was alluding to the business element of the county. But okay. But for those that took part in the when we did our working group to look at the review of the budget consultation, a lot of this came out. So that's why we always encourage all our groups to participate. I'm going to bring in Councillor Adams. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. Yeah, I think it's looking at the report, a 1 in 213 response rate is very positive. The fact we top the table, I think, is brilliant. Credit to all of you that have been involved with the creation of it. I think one thing that I'm interested in personally is around the social media element. Now, I understand obviously there has been consultation done through the social media media, but what I would like to know is how have we done that? Have we done that purely in organic results, or have we gone into the paid aspect of it? Because you can get incredible levels of results when using paid advertising, and I wondered if we had brought that into the mix, and obviously the targeting aspect of that when using paid advertising is good as well, to the point where you can put it to its geographic location down to latitude and longitude, so it can be incredibly accurate. And I wondered if we'd done that, and also if we have done that, how have we targeted groups within that? Councillor Creamer mentioned about how do you get to all the groups and who is limited to that. And I suppose I'd look at the targeting as well and wonder how much targeting we've done that in terms of the marketing exercise as well. But I think overall, I mean, let's enjoy being top of the table. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Obviously, we've been working with the team.
Bruce, Mike.
Working with Jen Sheridan on this particular issue. I'll draw your attention to agenda item 13 on page 17, actually, and that will give you an idea of how we are using different formats and different ideas to be able to try and access more people, like Facebook and LinkedIn and these sort of people. I don't think we want to get, how can I put it, whilst we want as many responses as we possibly can, what we don't want to be doing is, the problem is with this issue is what happens is the more money you spend, the less impact you have. You know what I mean? If you don't watch it. And so you've just got to be very, very careful. You don't start the actual spending on what you're trying to achieve does not get out of control. And so Jen is constantly feeding in. They meet regularly, the team do, to be able to make sure that it is positive. Do you want to add anything?
There is a form there.
Thank you, Councillor Adams, for your question. As Councillor Lowton's outlined, we do use a range of social media techniques and targeting as part of the budget survey consultation process. I think you've mentioned about that further exploration point of whether we could use paid for advertising or more targeted bits. And there's some of the areas in the report that we're saying we could potentially look at. Obviously, we have worked with our comms team in terms of some of the different profiles, in terms of Twitter, in terms of polls, in terms of getting the message out there to hopefully hook people into the main survey as well. It is an area we can look at for further exploration, should that be one of the recommendations. But as Councillor Lawton said, we need to be mindful of that value for money aspect within the budget, and as you've alluded to, you can go for a high range of different paid for activities, so we need to balance that. We're happy to come back, as we've said in the report, with costed estimates if the committee are making recommendations for a range of different things.
Thank you. Come back with.
Yeah, thank you. And I think absolutely have a look into that, because having used it regularly myself, I do know that it does have that ability to hit quite a lot of people for a low amount of money. And like I say, the targeting aspect does give you such an opportunity to really go after people that maybe always fill in surveys. I mean, for example, there'll be a KPI, an opportunity to home into something that does actually do that. So yeah, great. I'd love to see those estimates. Thanks.
Thank you. Councillor Guilfoyle.
Thank you, Chair. I just reminded myself of the recommendations that we sort of had overview, and one of them relates to the questions that sort of asked here about the young people and trying to encourage them to take part. And it does say that work carried out to investigate potential opportunities around how more young people could be encouraged to take part in relevant consultations. And just wondered, because that was a recommendation, have you done any work on that? And have you got any? Because one of the other things that's contained within the recommendation is about costings for that. And I just wondered if you've got any costings around that, whether that was going to be, as you say, there is a bit about the cost of doing that. My personal view is on consulting with young people. I think cost, in reality, the cost is, you shouldn't be managing it in budgetary terms. We need to do it, because they're the future. And if we can get them started early, then probably we can increase the numbers year on and year on and year on. So I just wondered where we were with that. I'd like to see us develop that, and probably develop that within schools, with the youth councils, the youth mayors, and our youth service, just to name a few where we could interact and get some feedback.
Good ideas. We're constantly looking at the demographics, because I think it's important that we create a balanced view. Because obviously, if the view is balanced, then we can obviously take it more as a truism as far as the results are concerned. And within that, there are a series of tactics, and that is one of the reasons why we're so heavily involved with comms. Isabel, do you want to add to that?
Thank you. Councillor Guilfoyle, we did take on board the recommendations from the committee last year, and we went through using the same survey but promoting that through the routes of our children. And ensuring that they were targeting schools, academies and other areas. What is one of the areas that may be for consideration to further enhance that, because obviously the results for consultations in that age demographic were very low compared to the other areas, is to look at specifically children and young people's version of the consultation. We did go into quite some detail on the task and finish group on what the best age range might be to consult, because obviously a child at primary school of say 6 or 7 may have very different views to a child who's in secondary school, or maybe an active member of their school council. So that's one of the areas that we've brought to overview for consideration, is whether a young person's version might increase the response rates. And again, we're happy to come back with what that would look like and what that would cost, because again, it depends on if we're looking at a particular format or if we're consulting, as you've talked about, with either focus groups. All of that has different opportunities and costs.
Thank you as well. Yeah, we're having a discussion here about a further recommendation, maybe focused on more central around children's, because that seems to where everything's coming from. If I'm getting that right, so that would be to consider a children's, young people's version to increase the response rate. It's actually in the report, but I think we need to maybe incorporate that into the recommendation. I'm going to, Councillor Fole, you just wanted to come back at something.
Just to say, I think that the point that just discussed with Councillor Guffer was well made, and I think I suppose one thing, having worked kind of with children's stuff, and I'm sure we all have to some extent, haven't we? Do not underestimate that very young children actually can come out with some really good ideas. Because you can end up actually being rather patronising and assuming, well, actually, they can come out with some crackers, I tell you. And I think, so don't assume, And there are ways to do it as well as it. I would love, for example, to go into school with a kind of a group of children and just talk to them about the budget and then say, what do you think? And then bring the results back. That would be brilliant. And I think that might be a better way of talking to them than actually giving a bit of paper and saying, fill that in. I think it would work better for them. So so I think that would be great. I just want to make a more general point. This to me actually, I a good report, and done some real good work to bring up the numbers, and that's great, Bruce. But the numbers are still, as you said, still very low, and this speaks to me, to be honest with you, just as there's a lack of engagement in actual kind of what's going on in councils and the politics in general, which is a shame. We're all worried that the turnout for the mayoral elections, for example, was going to be very low. When it was kind of 28%, we all went, hooray! Well, it's still not a third of the people in this country voting, and I think these two things kind of speak to each other. People think that whatever happens, it's not going to be relevant to them, or there's nothing much is going to change. And I noticed in your transformation, kind of jumping ahead to one of the reports, kind of a little bit later on, there's stuff in there that says stuff like, "We're not going to do things to you anymore. We're going to kind of do things with you," and this and stuff about kind of changing the culture in that way in terms of co-production. I think if we can do that, and I think we should, I think it's really good. I think if we can do that and do it meaningfully and across the board, not just in kind of one-off kind of pilots, I think that might then actually increase people's engagement. Make people think, well, actually, we're being consulted properly. Things are really happening that are kind of relevant to us. Therefore, it is actually worthwhile going out to voting and filling in surveys.
Thank you, Kate. Okay, there's no one else signaled. Oh, Bruce, yeah, you want to come back?
Yeah, thank you for that, Kate. We take on board those issues. It is a long-term project, you know what I mean? It's something we've got to keep pushing and pushing and pushing and pushing, which is like Mike and Jonah's question really on saying what would be the limit. Well, there is no limit. The more people we can get to engage with us, the better. And young people, it's always very difficult, as we've pointed out before, getting people to respond, particularly on financial issues. My daughter responded, but she's doing an economics degree at university. You know what I mean? I'm just making the point. You know what I mean? And so, but she has a vested interest in figures. She likes anything that she can get involved with on that sort of issue. And ironically, actually, the economics degree, they do quite a lot of work with local government. And that is obviously why she got involved. But we've got to utilise all those avenues we possibly can without running out of control.
Thank you. A couple of items from the report that haven't been mentioned, and it was the consideration of using the local radio stations, and then the exploration of capabilities of modern AI. I know there's a lot more AI coming into the authority, but could we maybe utilise some of that or explore that? So with that, we've got the recommendations that have been moved and seconded. We've got an additional recommendation. Martin?
Yeah, just a couple ones. So I think there's obviously what the members have been talking about. So there's a particular area of activity in the development of budget serving engagement, be on how to engage children and young people more, and then also a future report on the budget survey. We've got to a future meeting at a date to be agreed by the chair with officers.
Okay. So,
And finally, obviously, we're going with a recommendation to obviously everything in paragraph 17 you've alluded to that you'd like looking at more, but also, as Councillor Adams said about paid for advertising, that's looked into as well. The contentions.
Okay. With those moved and seconded, can I have all in favour? Anyone against? Abstentions? 2 abstentions. Okay, thank you. That's carried. Agenda item 6, the report of the Deputy Leader Cabinet Member for Transformation and Change, Councillor Lawton again.
Thank you very much. So what I will do is I'll just give you an overview of where we're at.
Yep,
there
sure.
And then Isabel is going to go through a few slides. We'll take more than 10 minutes to carry out the presentation, try and keep it as tight as possible. But it's to we gave a promise quite a number of months ago that we were quite happy to come along and present where we are at effectively with the transformation and change activity within the council. And to that end, here we are today, and we welcome scrutiny of the department, because scrutiny gives us extra ideas on where to work and where we can improve with the transformation and change agenda. And sort of like over the last 12 months, the council has implemented best practice approach to integrate the corporate department change, but written in over the whole transformation agenda is the way that the council is changing with its delivery of particularly young people and adult services across the county. The transformation and change agenda has been an integral part in that transformation. So excuse me using the word again, because we recognise that the way to operate efficiently and to the best advantage of our residents is to direct those resources to where they are most needed. And for example, the work that's been going on in Workshop and Retford, the Retford Hub, is a testimony to the direction of travel that the council is taking. But there is a positive. When I say there is apart from how much better it is for our residents, the positive is also its early intervention. And we recognise that early intervention as far as the transformation and change is the way forward. It's what most forward-thinking councils are doing. And I mentioned the CCM the other day. It's what most forward-thinking councils are doing, are looking at ways to carry out early intervention, both in adults and young peoples, to be able to reduce the demand that our services have at the end of the process, if you understand where I'm coming from. So it is that within that context that the transformation and change agenda is being operated on through my department. I do give a word of warning, though, is that on the back of our transformation agenda, most companies and most organisations that go through transformation and change, I have friends who work in transformation and change in banks, in all different organisations. I've spoken to colleagues, for example, some of the London boroughs that are operating similar agendas. It is not easy to carry out a transformation agenda when you are under financial constraints. It is not easy, and it's not just a question of ringing up a set of consultants and going, we want you to achieve this because this particular direction, because you are under constant financial restrictions and constraints, and that does make the transformation agenda far more difficult to achieve, because you don't have the investment, the investment you would like to have to be able to invest in turning those services to be able to get us on a front foot. But we're still working at it, and we are working extremely hard to be in that constraint to be successful for our residents that we represent, and we are driving it and making money available to be able to improve the operation of the council in future years, and hopefully make some savings. So the council has three corporate transformation programs. One is safeguarding, inclusion and support. The second is prevention. And the third one, which is I've just really alluded to, is forward-looking and resilient council. And if we can achieve that, that will make us far more efficient, and to be able to divert some resources into those areas where they're nice to have, as far as you as a councillor have. So, without more ado, I'm quite prepared to, after Isabel's done the slides, to answer any questions on this paper.
Once again, thanks very much, Bruce. Okay, I'll ask Isabel now to. Are you going to present between?
Yeah, Isabel's. Yeah.
Are you presenting? Are you going to? I'll show. Yeah, do you want to show the slides, and Isabel can introduce.
Thank you, Councillor Elliott. I was going to ask if members are happy with the slides that they have in their packs, as these were distributed as part of the papers, or would they like to have them on the screen as well? Happy with that.
Councillor Wilmot. I've got some extra papers here.
Public wants that. Obviously,
of course, there's the public, all the public watching.
If the public are watching, they will have them in the paper packs as well for the meeting papers, but happy for them to be presented if that's helpful.
Hundreds of people watching at home.
Please forgive my croakiness. I'm not sure how long it will last for. So, as Councillor Lawton has introduced and explained, this presentation should bring to life a little bit some of the aspects that you asked for as part of the overview meeting earlier in the year. And this brings together three sort of key elements in the slides of where the organisational change portfolio work has got to in reshaping the portfolio, how this links to the MTFS, and then also how this links to the council's annual delivery plan. So our overarching approach to change, transformational change, and the organisational change. So if I move this onto the second slide, you will see that this one's got the arrows of the balanced portfolio. And we've worked really hard over the past 12 months to look at that best practice approach to integrate corporate departmental programmes into one overarching organisational change portfolio through an organisational change board structure. And this was part of the annual delivery plan actions that I know that we've all looked at through overview and scrutiny from last year, as one of the actions of 10.10 to refresh and relook at the portfolio. The Organisational Change Board is chaired by our Chief Executive and attended by the corporate leadership team and senior responsible officers for both corporate and departmental change. So we are bringing that together, and it's supported by the Portfolio Office. Now, some of the different areas that I'm going to be talking about, you will have seen through various different of the select committees, and you will have seen those on different work programmes in different areas. The idea of this balanced portfolio, as Councillor Lawton's already mentioned, is that we try to look at sort of those national drivers, those policy changes, those implementations, those aspects that we are trying to look for as well as part of our annual delivery plan in delivering to the residents. And here you've asked for that focus on the financials. So you're looking at that balance, as Councillor Lawton's explained, between the delivery and ensuring that we've got the financial drivers in place. So I'm going to move on now to the slide where you have the circle and the triangle. and that tries to explain how we bring everything together in the one portfolio. Councillor Lawton's already mentioned the three key programmes, and you can see those in the circles, and then you can see as part of the triangles where we've got service improvement work happening within both the Children's and Family Services Department within Place and within Service Improvement. And you will have delved into some of the work through the various different select committees going on in the different departments. So this is how we represent it as this one council endeavour. The projects within the portfolio have a life cycle, so they're designed to have a start, and then there may be a short or a longer term one, to a medium, and then to a close, and this may go into business as usual, and you'll see some of the previous work we've done, such as local area coordinators, is now being delivered by the Place Department. The supporting the council's financial stability one, I'd like to draw your attention on this slide to the table which has the types of savings and how they're defined. This is particularly important when we're thinking in terms of MTFS planning, and I know Nigel will be supportive in when we talk about the different criteria of how you would see the cashable savings coming through as part of our budget. The pressure mitigations, these are pieces where you think about a department, as Councillor Lawton said, maybe have a particular pressure, say either adults or children's, around a particular service. So what the idea of the change work would be to bring that cost down, bring the curve down, so that we would hopefully be spending less on a particular activity. And then cost avoidance. Now this can sometimes be outside the lifetime of the MTFS. It could be a much longer term piece of change, and I know some colleagues are very familiar with some of the public health modelling or some other pieces of work where we're looking at avoiding costs on a future spend. The MTFS savings is about 30 million, as you'll see in the published budget papers, is delivered through organisational change. In addition to the organisational change saving, as it were, we also have values for our pressure mitigations where we're reducing the costs within departments, and then there's those other pieces on cost avoidance where we are endeavouring not to have to spend future money by improvements in what we're doing, so this may divert or reduce a demand on a particular service area. And the projects in your pack are linked to each of those different areas that we'll take you through. I appreciate Councillor Lawton has given me strict instructions to be brief, so I'm fully expecting to have a move on rapidly. So the examples of the projects, they're selected to give you that wider vision, as it were. Each of these slides gives you a very brief overview of the purpose of the project, the benefits, then the financial benefit, where this links to the Nottinghamshire plan and the annual delivery plan, and what the impact is now or going to be. Thank you, Martin, for moving the slide on. I will keep going and hopefully they'll match up at some point with what we're saying. To note as well, as we've talked about, some of the pieces of work are delivered centrally and some are delivered in departments. And we've also mentioned how you'll have had at recent different committees overviews of other pieces of project work in the portfolio. So if I move us on to the Stronger Families piece there, this is one example of a project, and you can see we've got the family at the heart of that in the graphic, and where we're looking through the different projects as we are mainly across those children and family projects, as really trying to best meet needs and avoid future costs or escalation of children and families' needs into other areas of the service. So this particular Stronger Families project, in phase one, we were looking at a new model of supporting families in crisis, particularly where teenagers are at risk of coming into care of the authority. And then in phase two, we're looking at the evaluation to further shape the model. And that fits into what we were talking about, as Councillor Lawton mentioned, about where we trial approaches, we try to move on rapidly, we evaluate, we learn from, and we build into, so that we're trying to get that wider impact for children and young people. Now the benefits, and clearly Councillor Foley, as you mentioned in your previous area, was talking about those wider community benefits. You can see here is those improved outcomes for children and young people, and that's in line with the national children's social care reforms and the regulatory standards. But in terms of a financial benefit, we're looking at a pressure mitigation to bring the costs and the demand down in line with what we have with our budget. We've linked there to the Nottinghamshire plan, so you can see how that links overall to our strategy in ambitions 1 to 3 of helping people live healthier and more independent lives, supporting communities and families, and keeping children and vulnerable adults safe. Now, some of the work, the impact of some of this work has been able to support young people to stay at home with their families for longer, and in terms of delaying safely those admissions into care, that's also improved where we're making placement matches and also those options for further reunification when you're working with the families. I've talked about sort of how we're going to develop the model as well on that. So if I move us on to staff travel and fleet, this is a different type. So we've selected this project so it gives you an idea of a cashable saving, which is linked to the MTFS, and you can see that in the budget information. As part of this, I won't go into as much detail coming from the slides as I know you've already got this, but the staff travel scheme, this shared vehicle pilot, was working with the Looked After Children team at the end of January, and we're looking at a couple of low emissions vehicles being shared with the social workers in the team. And this team was selected because they incur particularly high mileage. So we're doing quite a lot of regular monitoring of this project and the pilot, and we're looking to extend to an additional team to maximise the uptake of that. So you can see that this has got a cashable saving, and that's over last year's and this year's budget arriving from the MTFS, and we're in early stages of work on the fleet review with options being developed. So that will then tie up some of those key objectives, as you can see around the right hand side of the slide, and ensuring that we've got those fewer cancelled services. We're reducing maintenance on the fleet, we're reducing time when vehicles are off road, and we're also really targeting through that aligned work, ensuring that we're within budget. So I'm going to have to take a drink. The next one is an example of cost avoidance, and that's the community directory and content review. Now, we know sometimes from feedback that it can be tricky to find the right piece of information that you're wanting to find first off. So this piece of work, particularly in the community directory space, brings together a whole community directory so people are able to find information and self-serve more readily, more easily for themselves, that the quality of consistency of information and guidance is there, it's improved, it's all a really good standard. And you can then ensure that we have got compliance with different regulatory standards, but also we want to reduce demand on the system or coming into other costly services. So this is a cost avoidance example. The impact that we're looking at is we're hoping to see a reduced demand at the customer services centre and in other entry points to the system, and also improved customer satisfaction when they're finding information. So we're in the middle of looking at ensuring we've got good baselines for this piece of work as well, so that we can then measure improvements in those rates. The next one, if I move you to tech-enabled care, now this will be something that hopefully people will have seen or be familiar with through the recent strategy that's gone to Cabinet. And this is really about enabling people to be maintaining their independence for longer. And this is being run as part of an adult service improvement programme. We've got evidence from a wide range of Nottinghamshire installations of tech-enabled care, looks at it being really effective in maintaining or improving outcomes, in keeping people independent and safer at home for longer. delaying or reducing the need for residential care home services and reducing carer stress and enabling safe and timely discharges from hospital. It's one of the 9 ambitions, as I've talked about, within the adult social care that was tech-enabled care strategy, which was approved by Cabinet. And we're seeing substantial savings over 3 years from that work. And again, they're detailed in the MTFS profile. I won't labour on that. The final project example we've got is the supporting families and data maturity. And this is anchored within our children and family services. It's an approach to identifying and providing earlier help to our most vulnerable families by working in a whole families approach, which considered the needs of parents as well as children and young people. A core element of the collaboration is it can make those stronger and effective and sustainable is improving that information sharing and data across partner agencies to better understand the needs of families and communities and to tailor the support. And you can see that last year we exceeded our national target and were able to then progress in what we were doing. And we're also working on this new data warehousing, which will include data feeds from partners. So that's sort of talking a little bit in the partner space. I'm fairly certain now that you would like me to move on to the annual delivery plan. So to bring this together, because that highlights some of the projects for you, obviously the annual delivery plan then reports much more broadly on all of the activity that we're looking at against our programme of work per our ambitions. And this links as well to some of our business as usual pieces. Now, the quarterly reporting you'll see in the moment on the screen of the graph is our Q3. Usually we do the Q2 reporting, which comes through to Cabinet. Q3 is normally reported internally, and then we do the end of year report as the Q4, which then summarises. The data collection is currently in progress for Q4, so what you've got is the update there in relating to Q3 progress. And this spreads across each of the ambitions, giving you which of the number of actions were on target for delivery by the end of the year. And this gives you the progress, and you'll be able to see that as in Q3 we'd completed some of those. The vast majority of actions were on target for completion. There were some marked which had some issues to progress, and one which had significant obstacles to completion, which has been previously noted and reviewed quite intensively. The departments work on mitigating actions to enable the delivery by the end of the year, and if there are any areas which are causing any particular issues, these are escalated through the governance routes, and depending on which particular department or action it is, may require further intervention or mitigating action. I won't go through all the key achievements on the next slide. This just gives you an idea of what has been achieved as per the Q3 reporting. There'll be much broader reporting in terms of assurance, which will go through to Cabinet as part of the end of the year report. On the final slide, in terms of what's next, we've talked about where the reporting is going, and obviously, excuse me, we'll be continuing to align the transformation and change activity with the budget setting process, and we'll be continuing to monitor that. Now, in terms of the monitoring,
Keep going,
Keep going. Like a Duracell bunny that's gradually running out.
Sorry, I can feel I'm getting more high pitched. In terms of the financial monitoring, it's where we started on the agenda, in that you'll see the overlay of the timetable. But obviously members receive regular updates on the finances. terms of their budget, so you can therefore see the impact of the transformation and change work and the annual delivery plan in the finances. So hopefully I've tried to bring that together of where we are at the end. And I'm afraid I've missed quite a lot of my notes out. But please
I didn't get.
Councillor.
I've got Councillor Owen.
No, we don't. It would be, I'm just saying to you, Councillor Carey and Councillor
Creamer.
No,
Okay, it's got to be.
you'll find them asleep.
The recommendations for noting, wasn't it? So
It's the comment.
yeah.
Consider a no.
Yeah. Okay. So I'm gonna, before I open it up for questions, just gonna move the recommendation set out on page 23. It is for noting, but we're going to take comments on the report and support. Okay. So ask for a seconder.
Second.
Okay. Thank you, Councillor Kerry.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you very, very much, Isabel, for your valiant efforts in presenting an excellent report. I'm going to go back to some, I think, the Council's transformation priorities, and there's some comments in there, the bullet points, the little arrows at the bottom about reshaping our relationship with partners, exploring new potential ways, delivering collaboratively. And then you're talking later about delivering, what's the delivery plan and how you monitor progress. How I know, and the whole progress of all these projects are monitored with the departments and obviously through cabinet as this whole thing moves forward. So, but I'm really interested in how you develop the right KPIs, key performance indicators, with those special relationships in order to deliver collaborative delivery of all those services and the transformation change that you're trying to achieve. Apologies.
Thank you, Councillor Kerry. You'll see in the annual delivery plan we have a range of baseline measures as well as departmental measures for different figures. The underpinning reporting for this year's annual delivery plan also includes milestones, so you can see either an activity target which is developed in lines of how you achieve the particular target, or if it's a numerical percentage, because it might be based on a national target or some. So the idea is departments against each of those priorities have an appropriate target which is set, benchmark, and then measured throughout the year. In terms of the transformation programs, what we try and do is work to see which is the most relevant data sources we can. Now that may be through a resident survey or impact. It could be through a departmental KPI in terms of number of people seen or worked through. It could be based on a financial measure. So if a particular target is for a cashable saving, how many individuals would need to have engaged with the programme to get the best outcome. So some of the projects in the portfolio you can see are based on those different metrics. I'm quite happy to do a longer session going through each of the metrics and how they're put together, if that would provide assurance.
Can I just add to that, really? It's a balancing act, Eric, actually, about not spending too much officer time ticking boxes and trying to find out information and gaining valuable information which we can make management decisions on. So it is a balancing act, and it's quite a difficult balancing act as far as the department is concerned on what they see as a value as far as that target is concerned and what that KPI is. So so we're constantly evaluating our evaluation process. I'm also on to Isabel going, there's too many figures down here. You're spending far too much time gathering information and not managing the situation, or alternatively the other way around. I haven't got enough details. So we're constantly, it's a moving feast all the time.
Thank you, Councillor Creamer.
Yes, thank you. Partly been answered on Councillor Kerry's questions actually, but it's of the same vein about where we actually are at the moment. I mean, on page 28, the supporting the councils, there's
savings predicted of 30 million. It would have been nice to know in this report where we are, where we started from. If we saved 1 million, when did it start, etc. And on the same level, on the annual delivery plan, the actual data 82%, it still means 18%, isn't it? But because it's just written in that form, I don't know which is how important that 82% has been met and how crucial that 16% is. Are they big projects that's not been met and small projects that are, or vice versa? And there's no way of knowing just on that. So it would have been nice to know the size of the importance of the project, not just the amount of projects. So that's it. Thank you.
Okay. Glenn, you want to come in?
I think, yeah, I think mine is a similar question in relation to, because I'm looking at the slide of actions by status, at the bar chart, and obviously, as you say, there are 17 that are in progress, some issues. There's one that is significant obstacle, and you say that's been. Well, I can't remember, if you know what I mean. So it's like saying, what are those, and will in the annual report, will that identify those? Will it also identify? Because I know you sort of link the medium-term financial plan and sort of said, well, finance have got that, but sometimes when you look at the budget and the MTFS and that reported, it's a chunk. It's not this, and this. And I think what we as members want to do is, well, we want to look at where there are problems and what you've not made, and where you've done well, what that's meant. And I know you referred to that difficulty at the beginning, Councillor Lawton, where you said, and it's one of the things that I always, improvement sometimes costs. It's not about savings that you're going to make here and now. You may have to pump prime, and the savings may come 2 or 3 years down the line, or even a year down. And it's important to know that, that you can't. Some services you can change and you can do, and you can make alterations within the framework of the budget you've got. As I say, others you can't, and you need to pump prime, and there is a cost to that. And that's where you mentioned sometimes, Bruce, that you have the greatest difficulty, because sometimes you haven't got the money to do that. But I think it would be good to know that and have it all set out so that you can actually see that's what we're expecting, that's the improvement, that's the cost we've saved, that's actually cost us, and that's fine in my book, if it's as long as what the public have got at the end of it all is a better service.
That's what we had in our discussion, wasn't it?
Yeah, ultimately what we're here to do is provide better services to the public in the most cost-effective manner that we can. And sometimes we have to accept that we are a public body, and we have to pay. Sometimes it costs us a little bit to provide those services. But I think if that could come out in the annual report, that would really be helpful.
For me, thank you very much for that, Glenn. Some of the schemes that are brought forward, most of them actually from people within the departments looking for ways of doing things better, that we meet with them regularly, but some of them, the amount of funding that is required to be able to achieve that aim is just is beyond what we can afford. I'm not saying it isn't, but some of them are quick payback, some of them are slower payback. I mean, I'll give you an example. Take, for example, in adults, the use of AI, and there is a considerable amount of saving as far as that department has put forward. That requires a capital investment into the provision of all different sorts of schemes within people's households to be able to monitor their activities, and that requires an investment. But that investment has a payback, and it is well worthwhile that department going down that particular route. So what I'm saying is, we're not going to chase alleys where it is going to be too difficult for us to be able to to be able to achieve the aims of of transformation, and it will become too expensive because otherwise it's pointless, isn't it? You know what I mean? Unless it's actually delivering, maybe possibly delivering a better service for the resident or the client that we're dealing with.
Thank you. It's great that you've got that great understanding of.
No, so we'll provide you with that information. That is not a problem.
Appreciate it. Councillor Fole?
Yeah, I think that point is well made, because it's one of the similar kind of point I was going to make, because certainly if you look at the children's or social care generally, spending money kind of up front in the non-statutory service can sometimes save you a massive amount of money. When you look at some of the eye-watering amounts of money that actually are paid for some of the high-level need children, quite often where you've got kind of commission services that cost a flipping fortune, and I think people are profiteering out of that. But that's another thing, isn't it? So I think it's interesting. It's difficult some to do, isn't it? But actually, I think it's what we need to. And that's really what I was going to say. There's two things really. I think again to kind of just follow up from what other people have been saying. This is really interesting. There's a lot of work going on into this. There's some good stuff in it, but without any data or kind of evidence that kind of demonstrate. And I know that's coming next. But to have this report on its own, it makes it more difficult, I think, for us to scrutinise it quite often, because we don't know actually quite often whether it's working or not. And I know that will come later. But to have it disjointed is not that helpful, particularly kind of when you're opposition. But there's clearly I can see where you're going on that. And I think as well in terms of use of data, it's all this issue, isn't it? You've got masses of data, but how much of it is useful information? And it's well, I've got too much data on myself. And clearly, I think, and I'm telling you the obvious now, but if you want to find out actually which data to concentrate on and which actually concentrate on, then I think you probably need a clear line into actually what benefit has it with our residents. I mean, if you use that as a kind of a baseline, then I don't think you'll go far wrong. But I do understand it's a very complex area of work, and this paper demonstrates that very well. So thank you for the presentation.
I have to say, statistics damn statistics. My late wife was employed by Rushcliffe PCT, organising their star status, and when the PCT, when they were analysing the primary care trusts, and they gave them star status, she was there organising their star status, and she could deliver 3 stars every time. To know which PCT it was, she would deliver 3 stars because she was able to manipulate and manage the figures coming through that particular PCT. So I've been there, seen it, got the T-shirt as far as that's concerned, and watched that process happen. And we've all been through and watched masses of KPIs come in front of us, and we all look at the figures and go, "Oh, this one's gone up and this one's gone down. Why has that one gone down?" Well, actually, 9 times out of 10, there's an absolutely completely valid reason for the fact it's gone down. The strength of what we're trying to achieve, if I can sort of add to where we're coming from, the strength of what we're trying to achieve is most of the schemes, or in inverted commas, the ideas that are coming forward to the transformation team are not coming from us. They're coming from the actual departments themselves. It's ideas coming through from members of staff in adults, plays, young peoples are coming to us and saying, "I think we can do this better. I think we can actually reduce the funding in this particular area. Can we do some work on that? Can we do some work on this?" And that's where the strength's coming from. And they are directionalising, to a certain extent, all this work. Not all of it, but most of it. I mean, there's a few inputs from me. I've just been looking at some of the key achievements. There's about 3 there that I've been really driving, but the rest of them have all come from the departments. So, let's give them the chance. Is what I'm trying to say. Let's give them the chance to become, part of the whole team and bring everything in together to be able to achieve. Because we are. There's no doubt. Every single council, you just got to. Every single council, you're aware. You go on the same meetings as me. They are struggling. They are struggling, and it is our ability to be able to manage those, like SEND and all these sort of things, of identifying these issues and driving them. You bringing in the staff with us it's just paramount in our work, and what we try to achieve. Yeah, 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 yeah. So we're listening to them, and we're trying as best as I possibly can to give them their voice and also deliver.
Right, thank you.
Sorry, I'm just, but it's a, it's passionate.
Oh, thank you. Councillor Wilmot, has your question been answered in those, or have you still got a question?
I just got some observations really, because this is a huge project, absolutely huge, incredibly huge, and with so many schemes being involved. It's brilliant. But I just wondered if there's any of them been prioritised. Have you got priorities? The things that are going to be done first. But my biggest thing is prevention. I've been at this council twice now for 7 years, and all I've been interested in really is prevention, early intervention schemes. I think that's the most important thing as far as I'm concerned. The reason is that things come from family values. Teaching family values and discipline to our children's centres, at our schools, our colleges, at businesses, charities, churches, all can be involved and should be involved in trying to educate some of these problems out of existence. I mean, the educating against petty crime, antisocial behaviour, all should be tried to get them out of the system. And then, of course, the health issues. I mean, we've got a hell of a carry on at the moment with so many takeaways that people are using. Instead of looking at healthy eating issues, and supermarkets should be involved in that. It really should be.
Yeah.
To help people get the message that by eating healthier, that they'll live longer, as well as everything else. Now, as we come to the comms situation, it's essential that people get to know where the help is. So that must be also a big priority. And the message of change also must be got out there so that the community get the opportunity to take part. When I saw on the television only 2 days ago how much benefits are not claimed by the community, it's billions of pounds. It's unbelievable, and we must educate people into knowing where to get these benefits from and so forth. I know it's a difficult
Councillor
job.
Wilmot, can we talk about the council-wide transformation?
Well, this is part of the prevention scheme that you're talking about. That you should be involved in. I'm just making.
Okay, Bruce.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Councillor Wilmot, all I can say is prevention is actually a major issue as far as we're concerned in transformation and change. It is one of the most important areas we're dealing with, both in young people's and elders, right the way through the lifespan of the people that we represent. And in the long term, I have to say, it will save us money, and that's another reason why we're looking very, very close to that. And I recognise there is a massive body of work here. There is, but it is a body of work which we're prepared to engage with and try to deliver. And our colleagues are constantly onto us, asking where we are with particular areas. But again, I'm going to revert back to what I told Kate. Most of these ideas are coming from staff saying, look, this is what we can do this. We can provide a better service by doing this. We can carry out some early intervention in this particular area by doing X and Y. If we're relocated to where our most need is, we can do, and it is Ben Bradley, the leader, it is where it stretches from, but it is also on our 10-year plan. You know what I mean? It's one of our ambitions, specifically for early intervention.
Thank you, Bruce. Isabel, would you like to add?
Councillor Wilmot, when you started your question, you mentioned about prioritisation. So I just wanted to provide some assurance that when we went through revising the portfolio and looking at all of the different projects within it, of which you've just got a few examples there, we also went through a prioritisation process to ensure that we were delivering the right things, that they were targeting the areas. And this comes back to that area of balance, to ensure that we're covering that spread across different areas of ensuring we've got the balance of prevention, the balance of things that give us more rapid cashable savings and results, and also the balance of really targeting some of those resident needs areas, because that's really at the heart of all of this piece.
Thank you.
Can I just come back to Councillor Lawton? He said that he's asking questions from each department, etc., which is brilliant. But we also need to question the people that are suffering from the problem. Also, get out there in the community, find out exactly what the need is. Okay.
Thank you, Councillor Wilmot. Okay, that's there's no other councillor signal to speak. The recommendations have been moved and seconded and now moved to the vote. All in favour? Well, it's for noting, but we take all noted.
Or we can say like we'll bring the job.
We'll bring it back. We'll bring it back. Yeah. Yes. Okay. Thank you. Of course you can. Isabel, would you like to? You're going to stay? Okay. Thank you, Councillor Lawton. Enjoy the rest of your day. Okay. We'll now go to agenda item 7, shaping the future organisational operating model. I'd like to ask Adrian Smith, the Chief Executive, to introduce the report. You've only got a 30-minute slide deck, haven't you, for this one?
I can talk at length on any subject, Councillor. Just before I get into the report, could I briefly, Chairman, take the opportunity just to offer Paris an opportunity to introduce herself to the members of the committee. Do you want to press a button?
Hi, I'm Paris Ellis. I'm a graduate trainee on the Graduate Development Programme here at Nottinghamshire County Council, and I'm currently working as an Executive Officer to Adrian Smith.
Breaking her duck in talking in the chamber this early in her career is very impressive. But not only did I feel it'd be helpful for Paris to join us in this conversation because she supported me on the work that we're doing to engage the workforce, but when I first started to work with Paris, she said she would be grateful to learn more about our democratic processes in this placement. So what better way to do that than to attend the discussion today?
Democracy in action.
So members, let me firstly say thank you to the Chairman and to you for an opportunity to come and engage with you today about this topic. I'm going to probably set my slides to one side, not least to satisfy Councillor Owen, but I'll try and distill this down to sort of 3 broad topics and then hand over to you to discuss this. I'm grateful not only because I think we're going to get some rich content and input and views back from you, but also because this affords me an opportunity to live up to a recommendation you're going to discuss in your next report, which is where I've offered to advocate for the scrutiny process across the organisation. So bringing this here allows me not to engage with you as politicians, but as elected members, and to hear not your political views, but your experience and your insights, which will be greatly valued and will be absolutely and no doubt different to those that we've heard from the workforce. So let me talk to you briefly then about what we're doing, and by virtue therefore what we're not doing. Let me tackle the question of why now, in case any of you are wondering, and then let me tee up a debate and discussion within which it'd be great to hear your views, and of course I'm more than happy to offer my insight into the work so far. So first and foremost, what are we doing? Well, we're trying as a workforce, as a body of employees in the local authority, to make sure we've got a shared and common understanding of the context in which we're working at the moment. And it's fair to say that context is changing rapidly, whether you look at that just through the prism of finances, whether you look at through the prism of the issues and impacts that are facing our communities, whether through inflationary impact or cost of living impact or just the changing dynamic of a post-pandemic era. We're looking at the rapidly changing context that we're living through with the introduction of new institutions in our local public services, with the combined authority going live very recently. And we're making sense of that changing context and how it impacts on the way that this organisation operates. So we're looking at this very much through the prism of how our workforce are able to be freed up, engaged, heard, and then an opportunity for us to take away any particular barriers that we identify that inhibit their ability as a workforce to achieve the outcomes that are set by the members in the organisation. So what we're doing is workforce engagement. We've been on a process of getting out and about across the county, across the different parts of the departments, to try and understand what it's like to work here. Now, on the one hand, it struck us that we hadn't done that systematically, as in organisation-wide, probably since before COVID. We'd done it in thematic topics, we'd done it in particular departments, but this was an opportunity for us to do it more systematically. And of course, to particularly ask the organisation for feedback about how some of those pressures that they're facing in their day-to-day work impacts on recruitment and retention, how some of those changes in new technologies and the digital work that you've heard from Councillor Lawton impact or could assist them in their ability to meet the needs of the service users that they work with and support, and how that changing landscape in which we operate can present either new opportunities or challenges for us in the way that we work in partnership, particularly with our local public service partners, health, police, district and boroughs. What we've not been doing is talking about what the organisation's for, or what the priorities are, or what the long-term strategy should be, because as you know, not only is that set by you as members, but we as officers are working to the agreed plan that we have, the Nottinghamshire plan, and the annual delivery plan, the budget and the things that you've heard from Councillor Lawton in the previous item. So we haven't been inviting people to speculate on new policies or new strategies. We have been asking people about how we work as an organisation. And that's why in your pack you've got an operating model diagram that we've been using to help focus on how, not what. Why now? Why is he doing this now? Why is he talking to the workforce now about this? Why have we picked this particular point in time? Well, firstly, because when I was appointed into the role, I made a commitment that we wouldn't start making significant change because we were experiencing a whole range of quite significant operational risks and pressures. So if you think about the time that I stepped into post a couple of years ago, I think it's fair to say there was some instability in government that we were working through with changes in Prime Minister and Secretaries of State. We were experiencing rapid inflation, which had a huge impact on our budget that we needed to address and respond to. And as a result of some of the other economic conditions at the time, we were experiencing some real challenges around workforce recruitment and retention. Scroll a little bit forward, we then also faced some risks and challenges for the organisation around the outcome of our area SEND inspection. And of course, at that point in time too, we were facing some real challenges in the health service around urgent and emergency care pathways, which impacted across our adults and people services. So I said to the organisation, that was not the time to start talking about the future. We needed to make sure that we kept a focus on managing those day-to-day issues. But I made a commitment that once we'd stewarded the organisation and had some careful transition through those issues, we would take the time as a workforce, as a body of officers, to pause and think about the long term. And that time feels like it's now. So the other thing you might be thinking is, why doesn't he wait? We've got a general election coming, whether it's in the summer, whether it's in the autumn, whether it's in the winter. Do it after that. Or why doesn't he wait until after the county elections next year? I suppose my reflection I'd offer back is, I think this council provides really good services to its communities and has managed across all of those different events and those political business cycles, those other external episodes, because we plan. We think about the long term, we plan, and then we adapt. I don't think we're a wait and see council, and I think we also owe it to our residents that where we hear in our workforce that there are things we could do differently now around recruitment and retention, for example, that we do them, and we don't wait and see what might happen in a year's time before we make those improvements. So in terms of us as officers doing that workforce engagement, the issues that we're identifying, we're wanting to move into action. But again, I make the point, this isn't designed to change what the organisation is for or what the organisation prioritises, because that would be said by you as members. But I also think it's really important, given that rapidly changing environment and, let's just be honest, the electoral cycle that we're in, it's incumbent on us as officers that we are ready to adapt and face whatever may change, be it nationally, regionally or locally, and that we are fit for the future, and we've built that organisational resilience, and that we're able to face whatever challenges or opportunities might come. So let me touch on just a little about the kind of activity we've been doing, and maybe use that as a way of opening up the discussion with you today. So we've spoken to around 200 people face to face. We've spoken to about several thousand online, and the Viva Engage community that has grown up around this, using digital means of engagement. To give an illustration, one question we posed around hybrid working has had 4,600 engagements, and some 40 plus comments and ideas fed back to the organisation. We asked questions around use of AI, because we know there are parts of the organisation using AI now. So we want to know, what's the framework, how do we do that well, how do we do that safely and intelligently. Some 2,500 engagements from the workforce in that question, with again good feedback back to us, which Nigel and his colleagues in corporate ICT are picking up and moving forward. So we're hearing ideas back on everything from how might we do our EDPR, our appraisal process more effectively, and then moving very swiftly into putting in some new processes in place. We've heard about things like our employee value proposition, the way that we recruit and retain staff, and again responding very quickly to try and put some measures and new actions in place. And in the pack you can see the sorts of feedback that we've had from officers across the organisation, categorised into the features of a pretty standard operating model. And it won't surprise you that overwhelmingly we heard positive feedback, but also a lot of areas that we could make improvement around culture, around leadership, around management, around workforce, around digital and data, around the way we use our estate, but of course also the way that we work increasingly in partnership with our local public service partners. What we're trying to do then is to, as quickly as we can, identify some quick wins, the things that we can just give back to the organisation. We've asked them, we've heard some things, here's what we can do about it. And we've identified a number of those already. I'm looking at Marge because a number of them sit in her area. But also we're really keen to not finish the engagement there, either with the workforce or to gather other perspectives that might help. Hence the approach to talk to you here at Scrutiny, but also reaching out and talking with some of our other public service partners, and a question about what and how we might engage our communities in a conversation about the way the organisation works, how the organisation works. We'll come back to that. So let me leave it there, Chairman. There are, I think, 3 or 4 questions that we've posed which may be useful for you as a guide. And we know you've got lots of experience in different organisations and ways of working. There may be things that you think it is really important that we as officers give some focus to help improve the way the organisation operates. There may be things that are missing from the pack you've seen that you really want us to give some focus to, but also you may have some experience you want to pass on by way of ideas or opportunities we've missed. So happy to engage in that conversation, Chairman, with whatever time you can afford.
Thank you very much, Adrian. Before I open it to debate and get those suggestions, I'm going to ask that the members I'm going to propose a recommendation and ask for a seconder.
So,
Okay. I'll open it. If you'd like to speak, Councillor Fold, would you like to go first?
Thank you. Yeah, yes, thank you. Very interesting document. Very interesting research. So thank you for this, Adrian. I take your point about timing, but I was a little bit concerned about it. Just take the example, if there is a change of government, and we in effect have to kind of put various of their policies into practice, don't we, at this county council, that might actually change the way that we are organised. And so I suppose the first question, I've got one or two. The first question I think is the operating model you've got in here, is it flexible enough to handle stuff? I mean, you mentioned it, made a note, workforce in terms of recruitment and retention, finance, instability, SEND and health, they're all still there. And without being sort of completely pretentious or whatever the word is, there might be a few more thrown in by the time, might be. So I think, you need flexibility in the model, and you need to be able to deliver, because I'm very, very conscious, if you look at where we were when I started working at this county council, which is 2000 and something, when you looked at the corporate leadership team, the senior leadership team, the leadership team then, it was massive compared to where you are now. So I appreciate fully that probably, I don't know, I'm not going to comment on that because I wasn't knowledgeable enough to know what was going on, but it just seems to me that probably there was quite a lot of you and now there's not. And I just think perhaps that's something that, you have to have capacity. If you're going to deliver the kind of things that you're going to have to deliver here, and you're going to have to do it in a creative and innovative way, you need to have the capacity to be able to do that. So that's the first thing. I think as well, I mean, you mentioned about the link between how you work and what you do in terms of policy. And I get that. I just question a little bit though. Actually, we can divide the two kind of completely, and I don't think that you can. But just give you a couple of examples that popped into my head while you were speaking. Quite a while back now, I had a conversation with a colleague who put me in touch with the woman who runs consultation in the city council, and she was extremely impressive. The consultation was absolutely stunning that she was doing, and one of the things she said was that no policy is signed off until there is real proof by the cabinet member or the portfolio holder, unless there is proper, full and meaningful consultation taking place. And that is not just statutory, that's anything, everything. And I thought that was quite interesting. And the other one that I put into kind of recently in Broxton was in terms of climate change. I mean, again, we had a presentation at one of the CAP meetings, I think, from an officer who dealt with climate change and aiming to get to net zero, and the same kind of thing there. That runs through everything that they do at Broxton, and it isn't if something's got an impact on not getting to net zero, then it's not signed off. So there's just two practical examples of stuff actually where there was substantial change, and if you were going to do that, you would have to change the way you kind of manage some of the services, wouldn't you? And again, I'm sure there's better examples of that. They're just the ones that popped into my head. So I suppose there's the two issues. One is the impact, one is the timing, one is in terms of flexibility, and the other is the link between how you work and what you do. I don't think it's quite as clear cut as you've just described to me, but if you don't mind that challenge.
To come back. We'll take another one if you like, and then we'll see Councillor Butler.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Picking up on that point about consultation, I think we might have to be careful though. If you consulted on absolutely everything, then there's a danger you're spending so much time consulting and asking questions, you might not get any decisions. That's just my initial thought on that. But I understand where you're coming from. But when you first look at the slides, which I must admit I only saw for the first time last night, on first reading it says that 210 people attended over 6 events, and that averages out at about 35 people out of a big workforce. Am I interpreting this correctly? I'm sure you'll tell me if I am or not in a moment. But then I was very interested to hear your comment that there were several thousand doing it online, which I know is very much the way now. So how will it work that once we've digested all the responses that came through, what happens with regards to perhaps feeding back to the people who did bother to respond? How will we do that? Will it be more face-to-face, sort of sitting around a table type of thing, or will it be all online? And also, were there any sort of perhaps particular departments or services that stood out more than others in taking time to respond? And my point being there is, if there were, could that be a sign of particular, I don't know, you could look at it both ways, concerns or positivity from certain sections of the organisation? Hope that makes
makes
Thank
sense.
you. Thank you. Should we take? Linda, do you want to come in?
Yeah, can I? Yeah. Thank you. I was a bit concerned about the timing, for all the reasons that you made. The same reasons that you said was another, the reasons for doing it were the reasons why I thought, well, we're still in that position. The issues with the government, the issues with finance, inflation, send and adult, we've still got those, as Kate mentioned, we've still got those all about. But I understand that they're also organisationally, we've got chief officers who are in temporary or interim positions, and I don't think that's, and they've been in that position for a long time. I don't think that's good for any organisation. I think people should be, either confirmed in post, etc., so that it gives that solid organisational feel. So I see that. There are also a number of changes that have come across over the last few years, particularly in children and young people, education, where we now got academies, and most primary schools have got a date where they will become an academy, and therefore that means that the education and the children's side will look different. Our influence in that sphere will be different altogether. It's so I see that there are other areas where there are particular challenges and require looking at. So I understand the need for that organisational look at. The issue for me as well is about timescales. What are you thinking about in the sense of being able to deliver that? And would you at some point come back to Overview either before that's consolidated, as a view to again further consultation, and have you got a timescale set? Is it, or is this is the start of the journey, or you've actually come with the issue, but actually you've got a paper there ready for delivery, so to speak.
Okay. Is there any? So what we've got here is flexible enough for a changing government response, number engagement. We've got the timing, concerns with the education, timescale, and delivery. So you pick them all up and go at it.
So, I mean, to some of the specific points, is it flexible enough? Yes, and that's kind of a watchword for us, because again, we're always mindful of where we are in the political business cycle, and we need to make sure it's adaptive. I think the other thing that we would reflect on as an organisation is, if you want to look at this through the prism of structures, senior management structures in this council have changed roughly every 2 years. So if you look back through our history, there's been a constant process of evolution. So I don't think anything's static, but I do think the time was now to talk to the workforce so that we're getting people ready for whatever change might come. Are we putting anything in stone that prevents or crowds out opportunities for change? No, I don't think so. The issue about consultation and then engagement, who came and who didn't, and whether it becomes a public consultation model or not, is really interesting. I think we would firstly reflect that if we were to be talking about this through the lens of a policy around consultation and engagement of residents, that would be your business, not mine. We could help advise, and we could help the administration bring forward a set of policies or proposals around rolling out consultation models. That wouldn't be for us to, as officers, to bring forward. I think what we're talking about here is engagement of the workforce, but in many respects we're using the same principles. So I think I would probably talk less about consultation of the workforce and more about engagement or co-production with the workforce. If you think about the workshops we've had, we've taken a set of questions in and we've opened up a dialogue. That dialogue is leading us now to a second set of questions that we'll need to go off and explore. And I think it kind of speaks to your point as well, Glenn. In all of these workshops, I actually used the phrase, I am here without a blueprint locked in my bottom drawer that, I'm just going to unveil at a moment in time that's already been worked up. Actually, it was a genuine approach to invite colleagues from across the organisation to feedback about their lived experience working for us. and some of the feedback for us has confirmed some of our assumptions and beliefs. Some of it is allowing us to go off and investigate further. What was interesting about the profile, to your point, Richard, I think the children's department was proportionally underrepresented in the work, in the engagement. But that's interesting because if you look at our survey results for a national independent survey we do of people who work in social care workforce, I think it's 73% of our children's workforce say they are well engaged and and that their views are respected and acted upon by senior managers. So there's a hypothesis we need to test as to whether some of our colleagues in children's felt that they're already engaged. Question. I think we're also testing the hypothesis about whether we went to the right places at the right time to allow them to engage or to make it easy for them to engage. So to that end, I think our next engagement session is a different model. It's not a big static set piece. We're doing a kind of a pop-up version, for want of a better expression, in buildings that are predominantly occupied as offices by children's services. And secondly, we're also going to do a specific but different online version of the engagement to see if that also helps us to tackle that. So in some respects also this is a learning exercise for us about how we do workforce engagement in this kind of hybrid working way, rather than in the way that we would customarily have done it in the past, which was in the assembly room. So we're very mindful of the kind of the people we have talked to and the people whose voices might be missed, but that's allowing us to think about how we hear them differently. And timescale wise, where there are things that we're getting feedback from colleagues that we could just do, like the EPDR process, rolling out some of the toolkit on recruitment and retention, we're just going to do it. It doesn't require policy change, doesn't require a political approval. We think we need to just get on with it. And that might equally apply to things like some of the digital stuff that we've got already, but we need to roll out. Where we will identify longer term programs of change, we need to plan them, and those things will have to come back. And of course, if they require political approval, we'll bring them into the formal processes to do it. And that's why we haven't got proposals to do things like extend the size of the management team, because that would require politics. That's not something I do just in my authorising environment, and that's why that's not yet a proposal. We would need to talk to members about that if we were to go there. And fair to say there are mixed views. Hopefully that offers some responses back to you, but I'm equally interested, members, in if you've got views or observations that you're here. I'm happy with the challenge. I'm inviting of the challenge. We want to hear your experience and ideas to help shape and inform the work.
Okay, Councillor Wilmot.
Thank you very much, and thank you for a very informative response to tweaking here and there. Looking at the next steps, you're saying, ensure we build opportunities for further engagement with the workforce. There's a lot of expertise in the workforce, both at the top and the bottom. So, and it will give them, if you ask these people, the workforce, it gives them a lift because they think they're part of the organisation. So that's absolutely essential that takes place. And opportunities for people and communities and so forth. Yeah, councils have a little job with this, I think. Getting out there and talking to people and saying what we propose and what do you think about it and this, that, and the other. And of course, there's loads of community groups and so forth that we could go out to and talk to them. And then there's one of the biggest organisations at the present time where community goes to is the U3A in each. I mean, there's 400 go to the one at Hucknall. So, it's a great opportunity to get to learn, because there is expertise out there that probably could just say to you, try this. And you might think, crikey, we never thought of that. And it does happen. Engage with key system partners. I think we do need to get a look at other county councils, how they work with that system, through the system that you work in, because there are some county councils that are really working hard and doing well. Some failing, unfortunately, but we're not one of them. And so I mean, and you know, we could. It's for asking their views, and any big organisations that are dealing with the same sort of issues that you want to deal with. Great opportunity to talk to everybody about that. And I move on to the discussion points. What would we learn from our other organisations? Because we need to get a wider view of organisations that are delivering the same services, because there's a lot of private sector delivering a lot of issues that we deliver, and there's also some public sector ones that deliver some of the services. Getting to know exactly how are they successful in the way they put forward the proposals. You know, great stuff. And as I say, we need to make sure we amplify to everybody of what we're doing, and give people the opportunity to come back to it. You might have made a mistake on something that a top quality organisation might see as an opportunity to change your attitude towards a project. So it's just work. We've got to work together on this.
Thank you, Councillor Wilmot. Councillor Introna.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, just on the thanks for the report, Adrian. Just on the discussion points, I will make one comment. Since I've been here at the County Council, I find that organisational culture, if you like, pretty good. To be honest, yeah, is there ways to improve? Of course there are, and it's good that you're seeking ways to do that. You've asked if we've got any comment on any of these discussion points, and I'd like to comment on numbers 1 and 4 if I may. So in terms of what can we learn from other organisations without telling anyone how to suck eggs, organisations I've been involved with in the past, we've gone to some quite different organisations to try and find out how we can improve. I used to be in businesses that were packaging businesses, making transit packaging, and up in the northwest we actually struck up a relationship with British Aerospace, which was quite interesting, and we learned quite a bit from them in terms of organisational culture to deliver standards that were higher than where we were. But one that's always stuck in my mind is I was at a seminar with a gentleman called he was not a doctor because he was a surgeon, Martin Elliott, who was at Great Ormond Street Hospital, and he was a consultant. You've got right, it's strange, isn't it? Not that Martin Elliott. And he was a consultant heart surgeon, doing intra-womb cardiac surgery on babies inside womb. And they actually went to Ferrari to talk about how to improve not just their operating practices, but also clearly that they perceived that there was a different culture embedded in Formula One teams. And the interesting thing was that Ferrari learned from them too. I've got some information on that, which I'm more than happy to share. On the fourth one, is there anything missing that you'd like to see? It's great to see Paris here. One of the things that I've discussed on a few of the committees that I've been involved with is getting younger people in, and clearly retention is an issue for us. Certainly in my previous roles, one of the best things I ever did when we were looking to recruit young people into the business is stay out of it completely and let the young people handle it and go to the careers fairs and things like that. And we saw our take up improve sort of 3-4-fold in terms of interest that came in from young people that we were trying to get into our organisation. But happy to discuss further if it's of any use. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Truna. Very interesting. Councillor Kerry.
Well, thanks, Mike, for bringing up some of the stuff I was about to raise. So that's quite interesting. I was going to mention the fact that in pension committee we have apprentices and all that kind of stuff, and it's really, really important. So my point with that is, and also learning from other organisations, I think the key thing here is what are you going to use it for to develop your workforce internally? Actually, it's developing your reputation externally too.
because the sort of your future resource here, human resource here, is out there. So are you going to use that and develop that to get that message out that this is a great place to work?
Thank you. Can you pick up what you can. Thanks, Adrian.
Yeah, really, really helpful. And I'll make it my first item of business to arrange with the monitoring officer my trip to Maranello to go and learn from Ferrari.
I will accompany as chairman.
The task and finish group for Scrutiny, perhaps. But I think that's a great provocation, because to be fair, I spent time a couple of weeks or so with 20 or so of my county council chief exec colleagues doing the exact kind of learning, but not with that different kind of provocation that would come from engaging with someone, particularly left or right field. So yes, I think that's a really helpful provocation to put back to us. I think the point about further engagement as well is something that we're committed to. I mean, again, notwithstanding we've been navigating those really difficult operational risks, we've now started a process of workforce engagement, and we've no intention of stopping it, and we need to keep it going. And I think we are going to learn and improve and diversify the range of techniques that we've got to listen and engage with colleagues. And I do think the digital approach is an opportunity that we haven't yet fully fulfilled, as demonstrated by the number of people who are happy to quick log into Viva Engage and comment on a post, but would be less inclined to, get in the car and travel to a workshop and take a half a day out to be involved in the conversation. So I think the opportunities for us to kind of widen and deepen that engagement is something that we certainly want to fulfill. And I think so much of this comes back to workforce culture, as you've just described. And actually, we've been talking about how we give some visibility of that externally, particularly into the employment market. And actually, we've seen some feedback through some of those, what the appropriate term would be, about websites, Glassdoor and others who comment on us as an employer based on feedback from people who've worked here, or based on some metrics on things like turnover and retention rates and things like that. And actually, we get a good reputation through some of those external review websites. But there's already a conversation growing in the organisation about how we position some of our colleagues who are advocates for the organisation internally to become advocates for the organisation externally. And I think to your point, Mike, it was graduates that we invited to go out to the graduate fairs to recruit new graduates, because they were our biggest advocates for sure. We need to continue. We need to continue on that. So again, thank you for the feedback. There's some really interesting things for us to take away.
Okay, thank you. Of course you can, Eric.
Sorry. So my point about reputational stuff and great place to work. Actually, your staff here right now are part of that ability to send that message out there, and it's encouraging them, I think, to do so.
Okay, thank you. Well, personally, I found that really helpful, and the other members have. Have you found it helpful? Adrian, coming back. My one question: how would you like further engagement from Overview?
So yes, absolutely helpful, because it allows us to have that engagement with elected members in a kind of neutral space, which is really helpful. Obviously, we can have engagement with politicians in a different space, and your feedback is genuinely appreciated. So I'm happy to come back as we firm up things, particularly if they require more significant change. An opportunity for you to be able to influence how the organisation works. But also, again, this doesn't have to be static. If there are things you see that you think we could do better and differently, this should be a process of engagement between members and officers too.
So, really, really good. So, the recommendations have been moved and seconded, as set out on page 41. All in favour? Any against? Any abstentions? Unanimous. Thank you. Okay, we go to agenda item 8, big ticket item. The outcomes of the strengthening overview and scrutiny review. And I'd like to ask Marge Tower, the Service Director, for customers, governance and employees, and monitoring officer to introduce the report. Thank you. Over to you, Marge.
Thank you very much, Chairman. I will be quick because I'm very conscious of time. It's really one point that I want to make to you, actually, in introducing this. It was an independent review. We commissioned the Centre for Governance and Scrutiny, and the approach taken by the reviewer was very purposeful, because the Centre for Governance and Scrutiny and the reviewer in particular were very focused on the fact that scrutiny is a member-led, should be a member-led process, and actually she wanted to undertake the review in that same way. So there was lots of talking things through with members, there was lots of sharing, learning, sharing, understanding, considering options, and that was a very purposeful way that she set about to do that. There was dialogue with members and officers, but I'm primarily focusing on members here at all stages, at the initial analysis of the issues, what were the different perceptions, what were the different views, developing, testing, an iteration of proposals and considering options, and then feeding back as findings and recommendations were coalescing and being finalised. And I think that's a really important, it was really important that it was done in that way. And that's reflected in the report, which sets out the context, the findings, and then the recommendations. We've had extensive discussions in group meetings with backbench members, with cabinet, with the member working group. We discussed it at the Governance and Ethics Committee more recently. So there's a lot of engagement. And the final point on that, really, just to round off that point, is that's why we settled on the position in respect of that overview should lead this work. It should come back through to the overview committee, lead on the development of an action plan, because recommendations are fine, but you need to know that I'm going to do by 2:30 whatever, or you're going to do, Chairman, something by 3 weeks on Wednesday. We need to know that. So that's why the recommendation here today is that Overview will set up a task and finish group to help compile an action plan, a draft action plan, and bring that back here for further consideration. So the Overview are actually driving this work and its implementation. So that's really my main point.
Thank you very much, Marge. So there are two recommendations set out. Well, one of them's for noting, and the other one is to set up the task and finish group. I'm going to formally propose them.
Second.
Okay. So the idea now would be really to, rather than going to a discussion about that, is to, everyone's very much been interested in it, in the whole process and taken part in the review, is to get members to almost come forward, volunteer to be on that task and finish group. So, Councillor Fogg, yes. Oh, I've put you down now.
To say, I think, going to be kind of brutally honest here, because this is actually a very interesting and very honest report. I think it's good. We're a bit surprised there isn't a more formal report rather than just slides, but no, I think that would be expected in this situation. There you go. I think one of the things I was going to raise is about the task and finish group, because as you know, we have had concerns. It's documented in here, isn't it, really? And it's mentioned in here about lack of understanding and a lack of, I don't know kind of what the wording is now, people not understanding and wanting to contribute in a task and finish group. To be honest with you, I don't think they're working. For example, just to take the example of Glenn and I, who sat on the cost of living one, and despite Martin's valiant efforts to kind of keep us going and to keep the agenda up there, it went on for an awful long time for kind of all kinds of different reasons. The attendance was poor. Glyn and I turned up for everyone. I think you even managed to miss one, didn't you, for unfortunate circumstances, Councillor Elliott? But sometimes it was just Glyn and me. And there was nobody from the Independent Alliance group often. And actually, to be honest with you, not wonderful response from the administration. So I think, and I think part of that, to be fair, is actually because I don't know what's coming out of it. What's come out of kind of cost of living one? How has that made things better for our residents out there who are struggling in terms of cost of living crisis? And if you don't see that kind of development kind of happening, you don't see the kind of impact happening. Why do people want to do working prices? I don't think it's about understanding. I don't think it's about training. I think it's because people don't see the worth.
Councillor Owen.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. I chaired the working group into this, and 2 years ago I presented the amendments to the Constitution that introduced this whole process of scrutiny, and clearly it's felt that it hasn't been working as well as it should. And I think Councillor Fowle has made an interesting point. What you need to be able to scrutinise, or what you should be scrutinising, is critical in whether or not you're going to achieve desired outcomes and changes. Something as vague and, I have to say, political as a cost of living crisis really is too wide a topic for this council or any working group to consider. What it needed to focus down onto was it the council being effective in distributing the funding that was coming from central government? Where was it going to? Was it being got out in a timely way? Those are the sorts of issues that this council has got control over, rather than a nebulous topic, a cost of living crisis. And if there are failings in the way scrutiny is operating, and clearly members have felt that, I have to say, it's really by and large members' fault. They are the ones that should be driving it, without a shadow of doubt. I felt when we introduced the structures for scrutiny that, whilst they would be subject perhaps to change, that we'd more or less got it right. That we were involving the opposition in taking positions on those scrutiny committees. Councillor Guilfoyle, as an opposition member, is the vice chairman of the main overview committee, and the other three committees have all got vice chairmen who are not part of the controlling group. And that, to my mind, was right and proper. Don't get such a privilege as leader of the opposition at Broxtowe, I have to say, where Labour are running things. They don't give us any opportunity there. So I thought here we were doing quite well. But you've got to be clear on what you want to scrutinise. This morning, I don't think there's been any real scrutiny, quite frankly. None at all. It's been like an old policy committee where we've had reports from senior officers, from the chief executive. People have made comments. We've nodded them through, as you would expect, and that is it. And the same happens, I'm afraid, certainly in my experience at the Adult Social Care Committee, where I'm also a member. So I must take some of the blame for that. Members have got to drive, realistically, the things that they want to scrutinise. They've got to do it within, they've got to look at topics within a specific time frame to come up with appropriate conclusions. Once we've got that embedded, then we can go forward in terms of looking at the forward plan and perhaps calling things in, as is recommended in this report, calling things in for scrutiny prior to decision. But I think that, to be perfectly honest, is running before we've yet learnt to walk. So, for goodness sake, members, take ownership of this whole process. Don't look upon it as an opportunity for political infighting, because it should be non-political. It should be non-political. All groups are represented, or should be, and should turn up. And you hit the nail on the head there. There are some that would like to that sit on the sidelines and then rush off to the press with the next media release on something, rather than sit in, yes, maybe tedious working groups, looking at solutions to problems and making recommendations. Sorry, I've gone on.
Thank you, Councillor. Well, it's a good point, well made. I think when the cost of living review, the outcomes come to July meeting, aren't they? We will see that it was such a vast area to scrutinise, and what we did find was, as a working, we're not responsible for a lot of it. So we need to identify what we scrutinise, and we can only scrutinise what the council is responsible for. Thank you. Okay, so
I just wanted to comment on that, because I know we've got some agreement here, but not entirely. To call the cost of living review a party political thing is rubbish. Everybody's suffering in terms of the cost of living review, and it was narrowed down, was it not? The ones that you turned up, it was narrowed down. It did actually look at the council, the way the council actually did it, which is fair enough.
Which we'll see in July.
Which is fair enough. That's what we did. But what I wanted to see was actually some ideas and some challenge around actually whether we could do anything else. And that was kind of the thing that actually won't be. I mean, you're seeing here as well. One of the reasons why we're not taking ownership of it, certainly in opposition, is because we feel the constitution is set up so difficult. It's very difficult for us to do that. Because we regularly ask for stuff to kind of go on work programs, and they've not gone on work programs. So I think you've got to take some responsibility too, and actually in the way that this administration set up the constitution, because it does actually stop the opposition voice actually coming through loudly and clearly in the way that we hoped it would and we thought it may.
If I may come back, Chairman, as the introducer of this, that was quite the opposite of what is intended. The last item on this agenda this morning is work programme. We've got pages of the stuff. What each scrutiny committee should be saying is, we want to scrutinise this. We're going to set up a working group to look at it, because you can't do it in a big committee like this. And the committee says, well, yes, that's our number one priority. And if the opposition members are so keen on a particular issue, then by all means put it forward for scrutiny. And I think it would be unlikely that if you regarded it as a priority, that members here generally would vote against that. So do it. That's how it's been set up. Do it. Do it. It's no good blaming everybody else but yourselves. Do it and say, we think this is a number one priority. Can we get on and do something about it, please? Can we look at it? Let's sort it out. Let's come back with a report to the next committee in 3 months' time, because we've had a number of working group meetings. Put your members on the working group and hope that the others turn up as well. But don't hold your breath, Councillor Foley.
Thank you, Councillor Owen. Okay, so the recommendations have been proposed and seconded. Yeah, it's getting the right people to join, isn't it? And turning up. All in favour? Okay, that's unanimous. Thank you. We now move to the work programme, agenda item 9.
Chairman, I think we need to make it clear that we will be contacting members to come forward, because clearly, we've just had an important discussion. And we need to get members to come forward to sit on that, and it needs to be cross-party. If people don't attend, then they can't grumble after. The only thing I will say, Philip, and I know when that was brought about the cost of living crisis, you talked against it. You were totally against the council or anybody looking at it at the time. It then, and we took that away, and the terms of reference did narrow down to what we were doing and the impact and where the money was going from here and what benefit it was having for the community. So it did end up being that anyway. But you were very strongly against, and you saw it as a political issue. We saw it as a very important issue for people in Nottinghamshire.
Right, thank you. Okay, move to the work programme. Martin, introduce it.
Yeah, so the work programme is just to note. So as always, if anyone's got any suggestions, you don't have to mention them now, but you can just email myself and the chair. Since the work programme was published for overview, there has been an additional item added for the July meeting, which came out of the discussion at the last meeting.
It's one brought by Councillor Fold.
It was about contract extensions, so there's going to be a report on the contract extensions for Arc and Via at the next meeting, so that'll be coming to July.
Okay.
Well, that's great, but I know we have asked, since that's likely very complicated, certainly from a technical point of view, if we only get it a few days before the meeting, we can't scrutinise it properly. We just need the information beforehand. If you wanted to scrutinise it properly and thoroughly, then there's no point giving it us like a few days before. Just one other thing on the work programme as well, and we can't see it at the moment, so forgive me if I've got this wrong. We've consistently asked for a report on Top Wickhay, how that's going, to be on the work programme, and we've never seen it. Just where we are, what the current costs are, and where we are in terms of progress towards build, and whether or not it's still within budget. we've asked for that time after time after time, and it's never arrived on the work programme. And there are other things too, but that's the only one I can remember at the moment. I'll dig the list out.
Right.
Yeah.
Thank you. So the work programme's for noting that we've agreed any proposed items.
Yeah, I've just got a comment, Chairman, on the last item on the work programme, which is the place select committee, and it's a subsidised bus services and the bus network review. I'm just picking up where it says a briefing note to be circulated to members of the committee, and I just wondered, can we have copies of that briefing note, please? And I want to know how we got to that position, because we were supposed to be doing some scrutiny on those two particular areas, but yet we've got just a briefing note. It's just that I have got people in other areas who are obviously concerned when they see, oh, you're reviewing the bus network, and you're also reviewing the subsidisation of the service and the impact that has. And now we've just seen that there's a briefing note, and they actually want to know, well, what does the briefing note say?
Okay, that's been picked up by Martin, so we can circulate that. Okay, I'd like to thank you all for your attendance and close the meeting.